The person who hurt you is missing you now. The person who made you feel unseen, who received your love like it was ordinary, who stayed close enough to take what you offered but not close, enough to truly see what it was, that person cannot stop thinking about you. And psychology has a very specific explanation for why this is happening. Not a hopeful one. Not a coincidence. A documented, predictable, and inevitable pattern that occurs when someone loses a genuine emotional connection they did not have the capacity to value while they had it. This is not wishful thinking. You are not inventing the shift you have sensed in them. What you are detecting is real, and it follows a psychological sequence so consistent that once you understand it, their missing you becomes less of a mystery and more of an answer to a question you have been carrying for months. You already know the quiet version of this feeling. The moment you realized you were finally okay, slowly, privately, without announcement, and something in you began to settle. The weight of loving someone who did not love you back with the same presence started to lift, and somehow, precisely as you began to be okay, they began not to be. Psychology confirms what you sensed is not a coincidence. It is a mechanism, and once you understand it, the question of why they miss you now has an answer that has nothing to do with your worth being in question, not ever. They hurt you and moved on as if it cost them nothing. And then, slowly, quietly, in the months that followed, it began to cost them everything. Here is exactly why. Here is the core truth worth understanding before anything else. People do not fully recognize what something was worth while they have it. They recognize it when contrast, absence, and the failure to replace it finally force the truth upon them. And the reason this recognition arrives months later, not immediately, not in the first weeks, is that the full weight of a genuine loss does not land all at once. It arrives in accumulating waves, each one a little heavier than the last, each one a little harder to explain away. This video is not about whether they deserve another chance. That is a different question entirely, and one only you can answer. This is about understanding the psychology of what is actually happening inside them so that you can finally make sense of something that was never your confusion to carry. The first thing that happens when someone loses a real emotional connection, even one that was unbalanced, even one where one person gave far more than the other, is not a thought. It is a physical event. Neuroscience shows us that when two people form a genuine attachment, both nervous systems undergo structural neurochemical bonding. Oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, these are not feelings in the abstract sense. They are chemical events that wire the brain toward a specific person's presence, toward the particular rhythm of their voice, their energy, the way the nervous system learned to regulate in proximity to them. And when that presence is removed, the brain does not simply move on. It registers the absence as a deficit, a persistent low-grade neurochemical withdrawal from something the body had been structurally conditioned to expect. This is the first thing happening inside them months later, and it is important to understand it clearly. He is not missing her in the way she missed him during the relationship. Present, trying, reaching towards someone who was not fully there. He is missing her in her absence. The neurochemistry is identical. The timing is everything. While she was available, the brain took that chemical input as given. The moment she was no longer available, the deficit began. And deficits, unlike presences, do not go unnoticed for long. His missing her is not sentimental at its root. It is biological. It was always going to happen. The only variable was when she would be far enough away for him to finally feel it. But the biology does not operate alone. What begins in the nervous system is quickly confirmed by experience. And experience is relentless. After she walked away, he continued living. New people, new connections, new conversations with new presences. And every single one of them was measured, unconsciously, persistently, without his permission, against the emotional standard she had established in him. What psychology calls the contrast effect is not dramatic. It does not arrive in one moment of recognition. It accumulates one experience at a time, each one revealing by comparison what is no longer there. What she gave him was not generic warmth. It was specific. The quality of her attention, the way she listened without an agenda, the way she stayed present when most people leave, the particular steadiness she brought, to him that he received as ordinary because he had never had to go without it. Research on attachment signatures confirms that Genuine emotional connection creates a quality of being with someone that is not transferable. It is not reproducible by someone else. It has a specific texture that only that person, with that depth and that particular way of being in the world, could create. And so he tries. New connection after new connection. Each one fine, each one not quite right. Each one quietly confirming the absence of something he cannot name but can know. Longer stop noticing. He is not missing a concept of her. He is missing a specific, irreplaceable quality of being alive that only existed when she was in it with him. But there is a dimension of this loss that goes even deeper than what she gave him. There is something that left with her that he may not be able to articulate at all, and that may be the heaviest part of what he is carrying. Research on what psychology calls the Michelangelo effect reveals something profound about the nature of deep relationships. Partners do not simply change each other. They reveal each other through consistent, genuine presence, through being truly seen by another person. The best and most honest version of who someone is gets drawn out, not performed, not constructed but surfaced, made real in a way it cannot be alone. Around her, he was a version of himself he may not have been anywhere else, not managing his image, not performing for someone watching. Simply be more present, more honest, more fully himself than he knew how to be without her steady, non-judgmental seeing of who he actually was. And when she left, when he lost her, he did not only lose her, he lost access to the version of himself that existed in her presence. And that loss is harder to locate than the loss of a person. It is harder to grieve because it does not have a face. It only has a feeling, the persistent, quiet sense that something in him went still when she left, something that was more alive when she was there. He cannot tell you this is what he is feeling. He may not have the language for it. But psychology confirms it is one of the most significant dimensions of relationship loss, and one of the most invisible, because it is not the loss of another person. It is the loss of yourself as you existed in the light of being truly known. But none of this arrived without a cost he did not see coming. And understanding that cost is where this psychology becomes harder to look at. Behavioral psychology has documented what researchers call affective forecasting failure, the consistent human tendency to be wrong about how we will feel in the future, particularly around loss. When he hurt her and through neglect, through emotional unavailability, through receiving what she gave without recognizing it as the rare thing it was, he was making unconscious predictions. He was forecasting, and his forecasting was wrong in both directions. He underestimated what her presence was worth while he had it. This is what psychology calls impact bias in reverse, the minimization of something already present, already familiar, already woven into the baseline of daily life, and he overestimated how easily he would be fine without her, assuming that the removal of something he had grown accustomed to would feel like relief, like space, like freedom. What he could not predict, from inside the comfort of having her still there, was the specific weight of her particular absence, the exact shape of what she filled that he could not see until it was empty. The moment the forecasting failure becomes undeniable is not dramatic. It does not arrive as a single revelation. It accumulates in quiet, unglamorous moments until the full weight of what he had and what he chose to treat carelessly lands with a precision that no amount of self-protection can continue to soften. He did not know what he was choosing when he chose to stay the way he was. He did not know what he was losing when she finally stopped being available to lose. And then there is the reason that sits beneath all the others, the one most people sense but cannot name. When a person hurts someone who genuinely loved them, who gave fully, who stayed present, who loved without the conditions and calculations that diminish love into transaction, and then loses that person, a specific psychological process begins that is unlike ordinary grief. Psychology's research on moral emotion and cognitive dissonance shows us that it is not simply the missing that creates this particular quality of pain. It is the missing combined with the knowledge that you were the reason. Every pathway of grief leads back to the same undeniable place. He did this. Not a circumstance, not a misunderstanding that had no author. His choices, his emotional unavailability, his failure to recognize what was in front of him until it was no longer there. Normal grief has external causes to reach toward, other explanations to lean on. This grief offers none of those exits. Every time he reaches for relief, The route back leads through the same truth he cannot argue with. This is not punishment in any mystical sense. The karma mechanism is not cosmic retribution. It is the natural, documented psychological consequence of hurting something, genuine, and then having to continue living in the world that its absence created. What he is carrying months later is not only her absence, it is the weight of knowing he authored it. And that weight has a quality unlike any other loss because it offers him no one else to blame, and no story in which he was not the one who chose this. But here is the final reason, the most psychologically precise one, and the one most directly connected to something you are doing right now, whether you realize it or not. While she was present, loving, available, consistent, her emotional investment created a dynamic of perceived abundance in his mind. She was there. The connection was accessible. The warmth was available. And what behavioral psychology confirms about human beings is this: we consistently, reliably, and often irreversibly undervalue what feels permanently available, not because we are cruel, because the brain does not register value in the presence of certainty. It registers value in the presence of scarcity. But as she began to heal, as she gradually withdrew her emotional energy, stopped reaching out, stopped making herself available to someone who had not treated that availability as the gift it was, and something shifted in his psychology at a fundamental level. Psychological reactance is the documented phenomenon in which the moment something freely available becomes genuinely inaccessible, its perceived value increases dramatically and immediately. What he had dismissed as permanent suddenly revealed itself as finite. What he had treated as guaranteed suddenly became something he might have lost forever. And that shift in perceived availability is not subtle. It is one of the most powerful motivational forces in human psychology. Her healing is not just her recovery. It is the psychological trigger for his reckoning. The more whole she becomes, the more settled, the more at peace, the more genuinely okay, the more undeniable his loss becomes. Her peace is paradoxically the clearest possible evidence of everything he failed to value. He does not miss her most when she is broken. He misses her most when she is fine without him, because her being fine without him is the most precise confirmation available of exactly what he lost and exactly what he was never capable of being grateful for while he had it. But here is the truth that holds all of this together, and that you deserve to hear stated plainly. The psychology of why someone who hurt you starts missing you months later is not complicated at its core. Genuine love of the kind you gave does not simply disappear when the person receiving it stops recognizing it. It accumulates in its absence or into the fullest possible evidence of what was lost. He is not missing a memory. He is missing the irreplaceable daily reality of being loved by someone who meant it. And that kind of missing does not diminish with time. It grows, because what was real does not fade. It simply becomes more undeniably real the longer it is gone. Now this is for you, not for understanding him, for understanding yourself and what you carried. Loving someone who could not recognize your worth while you were there has a specific cost that does not get named often enough. It is the exhaustion of giving depth to someone who received it as ordinary, the particular grief of being fully present with someone who was not fully present back, the quiet erosion that comes from being consistently met with less than what you were consistently offering. That cost was real. It was not in your imagination, and it deserves to be acknowledged for exactly what it was, not minimized, not rationalized, not quietly absorbed as if it were simply the price of loving someone. His missing you now does not undo any of that. It is not the closure you needed then, arriving late. It does not retroactively repair what happened between you or return to you the time and energy and emotional investment you gave to someone who did not receive it the way it deserved to be received. But it is a confirmation on a psychological one, grounded in everything this video has walked you through, of something you always knew and were made to doubt. What you gave was rare, what you offered was real, and it was worth exactly as much as you always believed it was. His missing you is not new information about your value. It is simply his delayed arrival at a truth you were always already living. You did not receive what you deserved not because you asked for too much, but because you gave what you had to someone who did not yet have the emotional capacity to receive it without taking it for granted. His inability to see your worth while You were there was never a measurement of you. It was a measurement of his limitation. A limitation in his capacity for depth, for presence, for recognizing the rare when it is standing in front of him. Those have always been entirely different things. His ceiling was never your floor. You deserve someone who recognizes what you are while you are there, not someone who needs contrast and loss and months of missing. You to arrive at what should have been obvious from the beginning, not someone who requires the education of your absence to understand what your presence was worth. Someone who looks at you clearly, fully, with complete attention and knows, without needing to lose you first, without needing to fail to replace you before they understand that you were never replaceable. That is not too much to want. It is the minimum of what genuine love looks like. And you are not required to accept someone who only discovered that minimum after you were already gone. You were not hard to love. You were given to someone who had not yet learned how, and the months he spent missing you were simply his education arriving too late. If this gave words to something you have been carrying in silence, please leave a like, not as a favor, but as a signal that this kind of truth is what you came here for. Subscribe if you want to keep understanding the psychology behind the patterns that shaped you. You are not alone in what you gave, and you never have to be.